watching the Mystical Green Beanie.
Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am the Mystical Green Beanie, and welcome to my best of, worst of, spoiler-filled review for Doctor Strange. Now, before I start, I really should preface this review by admitting that I don't know all that much about Doctor Strange. I've read maybe 6 or 7 issues of the original series from the 1960s and 70s. I've read The Oath, I've read Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom, Triumph, and Torment, and I have been reading the current series by Jason Aaron, which is amazing, by the way. Anyways, the point that I'm making is that my knowledge of this character is very limited, so if I say something ignorant or incorrect, my bad. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into my review. And as always, let's start with the positives. Let's talk about the best of. And the first thing that I really loved was the acting. Now, I know I say this in almost all of my reviews, but the acting really was on point. I can't think of anyone who gave a bad performance. I mean, I had some issues with the script here and there, but I'll get to that a bit later. But that aside, the actors did wonderfully with what they were given, and I really think that they should be recognized for that. Even Benedict Cumberbatch, who I originally wasn't on board for playing Doctor Strange, I feel he was fantastic. I also feel like his American accent was perfect. It was far better than it was in 12 Years a Slave. And again, I had some issues with the way the character was portrayed, but that was all in the script and not with Cumberbatch because he completely embodied this role. The second thing that I really appreciated were the visuals. Now, normally I don't recommend seeing movies in IMAX or 3D, but this movie was worth it because the visuals were stunning. It's like a Steve Ditko drawing come to life, and it's everything that I imagine he was imagining when he was drawing the book originally. I especially love the fight scenes in the mirror dimension. That was breathtaking and absolutely phenomenal. And that leads into my next point, which is the fight choreography. It is beautiful. It feels very fluid and natural, nothing looks rehearsed at all, and that's something that I feel people take for granted in modern cinema these days. I feel like we always look at a fight scene and say, well, that was cool, but nobody ever really comments on how natural it feels, because that is very hard to do, especially with martial arts fight scenes. It's very difficult to not make it look artificial, and it felt very fluid here, and I really wanted to comment on that. Another thing that I really loved was the finale. Now look, I've made it no secret, I feel like after Phase 1, Marvel got lazy and they slipped into a formula. Granted, it's a winning formula because all of their movies are critical and commercial hits, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But it's also very predictable, and I know that's not popular to say, but that's just how I feel. And while this movie does follow the Marvel formula to a T, it does so in a very creative way, and I really appreciated what they did with the finale. Especially how they did Dormammu. I thought that he was really cool, and I liked the idea of the time loop and how Doctor Strange manipulated Dormammu into doing what he wanted, like he's done in the comics that I've read before. Overall, the ending of this movie was very satisfying and very imaginative. Finally, this is a small thing, but it's still something that I noticed. I love how Doctor Strange wears his traditional blue robes as opposed to that weird looking black and red Dark Lord of the Sith cloak that he wears in the comics every once in a while. Again, it's something small, but it's the little things that count. Alright, so those are my positives. Granted, these weren't all of my positives, these were just the best of, meaning that these were the things that stood out to me that I really liked. But with that said, let's get into my negatives. Let's talk about the worst of. And starting this list off is something that I feel Marvel seriously struggles with, and that is humor. Now don't get me wrong, I like humor. Humor is good, when it's called for. And the MCU seems to be allergic to taking anything too seriously. For example, after the Ancient One dies, Stephen Strange puts on the Cloak of Levitation and he's ready to kick ass, but then the cloak starts messing with his face and he literally says, "Stop! Stop it!" And it sucks all of the tension out of that scene, and this happens a lot throughout the course of the movie, and it's really annoying. In fact, I think Age of Ultron has officially been dethroned for having the most amount of unnecessary jokes in a Marvel movie. Another thing that I wasn't too pleased with personally was the characterization of Stephen Strange. Because Doctor Strange, as I know him in the comics, is always portrayed as being an asshole who's on the verge of being irredeemable, but through the Ancient One's teachings, he learns humility and regains his humanity. But here, he's a jokey, fun-loving guy who's just really confident that he can do his job properly. The best way that I can describe it is that I expected Dr. House, but I got Derek Shepherd from Grey's Anatomy instead, so that was a bit off-putting. Also, in keeping with the character of Doctor Strange, he's given this weird quirk where he's obsessed with music, and again, the joke wore thin after a while, and it's just something that I wouldn't typically associate with this character, and overall it just feels very random. Another thing that annoyed me was the runtime. This movie really could have ran a bit longer. There's supporting characters that I think the movie wants me to care about, but I don't because they're not developed enough in the film. That said, I've only seen the movie once, so I may feel differently upon repeat viewings, but as of right now, I feel like these characters could have been fleshed out a bit more in a movie that's already kinda short. I also feel like this movie takes the really interesting theme of time and does nothing with it aside from set up the Infinity Stones. I also dislike the fact that they made the Eye of Agamotto an Infinity Stone, but I kinda knew they were gonna do that anyways, so I was prepared for that. Regardless, time plays a huge role in this movie, and again, I've only seen the movie once, so it's possible that I've missed something, but I think they could have gone in far more personal and interesting places with that concept and how it relates to Stephen Strange and his accident and his relationship with Night Nurse and all that. But again, going back to my previous point, this movie should have and could have been longer. And the last thing that I wasn't too hot on was the fact that Baron Mordo wasn't the villain of this movie. And again, I don't have an intimate knowledge of Doctor Strange, but from what I do know of the character and his mythology, Caecilius does exactly what Mordo does in the comics, so I don't know why they didn't just make Baron Mordo the villain of the movie. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the film. Personally, I really enjoyed myself. I wasn't blown away like I wanted to be, but it didn't suck, and that's all I could ask for. That said, in a perfect world, if you fused this with the Doctor Strange animated movie that came out a few years ago, then I feel you'd have the perfect Doctor Strange adaptation. Regardless, I appreciate the movie as is, and I recommend that you go see it in theaters. So, those are my thoughts on the film, but what about you? Did you like the movie? Did you dislike the movie? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I am the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos.